Hi everybody, welcome to another live session from Aussizz Group. My name is Jorge Gamba. I'm your agent today and I'll be discussing a few things that our clients have been asking us for the past few weeks, especially in the context of the points going so high. How do I get my PR quicker? I'm sick and tired of waiting for 2 years on 75 points. How do I get my PR now? I'll be discussing some of the strategies you can implement to get your PR quicker, okay? Then a lot of our clients as well, they're in the 45s. Their visas are finishing in the next sort of 6 to 12 months. Some of them have completed professional year. Some of them have done their internships. Some of them have completed 12 months Australian work experience. They're up there with the PTE. Some of them have done NAATI, but they're not getting invited yet. So, in most cases, if your 45 is finishing, you'll need to do something. You need to apply for another visa. Could be a student visa if you don't have enough experience to get sponsored on a work visa. So I'll be discussing how to jump onto a student visa from a 45. But also on very rare cases, depending on your profile and depending on what you intend to study after the 45, to keep extending, to keep buying you some time in Australia, your application may be refused. And what happens if you get an application refused? Well, you have to appeal. And what happens if the tribunal say no? Well, you have to appeal to the federal court. And what happens if the federal court says no? Well, you need to apply for ministerial intervention. And what happens after that? I'll be discussing some of the things in my personal experience at the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, on hearings and on submissions, and as well as assisting clients with federal court applications as well, because we can do that as well. So to start with, how do I get my PR now? Well, to get PR, as I've discussed before, and I'll just recap for some of our new members. And by the way, if you are benefiting from this information, or you feel like it's worth sharing, feel free to tag your friends. I'll be leaving my mobile phone number in the comments later on. I'll be answering some of your questions. So if you've got any questions at any point, type them down, and over the next sort of 24 hours, I'll be answering each one of you, and I'll be leaving my number down below. So if you want to contact me via WhatsApp, you can do that. Or if you want to speak to any of our other agents, we have agents who speak French, Hindi, Gujarati, Punjabi, Farsi, Malay. So I'll be leaving my number down below, and you can contact us on 039602 3435. So back to the PR. So you get PR in one of 5 ways, either through points in an occupation on the list, or through an employer, an Australian employer, as long as you have some experience, or through a family member, like a partner. Now, in Australia, there is not chain migration like there is in the USA. In Australia, you gotta have either a spouse, or de facto, or a husband or wife who is an Australian, or a New Zealander as well, or someone who has access to PR who, you go onto their visa. But your cousins and uncles and brothers who live here, they can give you points, but then you have to go back to number 1, which is apply through the point system. So the third way is a partner. The fourth way is to apply for a refugee a visa, a protection visa from onshore, or refugee from offshore. This is something that we help our clients with as well. Those are high-risk visas, but depending on your case, you may be a good candidate. Or in the last way to become PR is to make an investment in Australia, monetary investment of $1.5 million upwards, which will get you PR. And with all those 5 options, at Aussizz, we can help you. We can help you through the point system, through employers, through partner visas, through refugee protection visas, and with investment visas. Now, most of you will be trying to apply through the point system. So getting a skills assessment in an occupation that is on the long-term list, if you want to do the 189, or if you're located in Tasmania, in Adelaide, in Canberra, sometimes as well in other parts like in New South Wales, in Queensland. Queensland just recently opened. In WA, in Victoria, you can get, depending on the requirements of each state, you can go for a 190 visa. Now, the difference between the 189 and the 190 visa is that in the 190, you have the support of a state or territory. And they offer you 5 points as long as you make a promise that you're going to stay in that state for another 2 years after you get your PR. Now, each state has different requirements. So Victoria, usually for engineers and people in IT and nurses and teachers, they'll have, you need a minimum of at least 2 to 3 to 5 years experience. For chefs and cooks and restaurant managers, they have 5 years experience. So, some of you who just finished your diplomas or uni, this is not an option for you in terms of Victorian state sponsorship. Although for some engineers, Victoria has a stream for engineers where if you graduate from a Victorian university with a Masters of Engineering, as long as it's not engineering management, things like that, then you can have that assessed by Engineers Australia. And if you get a job offer, then you can apply for Victorian state sponsorship even if you don't have 3 to 5 years experience as an engineer. Now, New South Wales was usually the state that gives you sponsorship without you ever having to have lived in New South Wales, which is great. Even if you didn't have points for the 189, you could then apply for New South Wales as well, even if you've never been to Sydney. That's still the case for some occupations like marketing specialist, like restaurant manager, like graphic designer. But for some occupations like accountant, like finance manager, those occupations, they're overly subscribed. There is way too many people for the places there are. So New South Wales has put in additional requirements that make you be there, have worked in New South Wales for at least 12 months before you can get the 5 points from New South Wales. Queensland, on the other hand, Queensland usually requires that you graduate from a Queensland university or that you have a job in Queensland for the last 6 months. If it's in regional Queensland, outside of Gold Coast, outside of Brisbane, then the requirement is less. It's about 3 months. Northern Territory, you need to have studied there before you can access Northern Territory sponsorship. In WA, all occupations in the WA list are skill level 1, so you have to go to uni. They don't sponsor things like chef or mechanic or plumber or carpenter. They would sponsor occupations skill level 1. So all your professional engineers, technologists, marketing specialists, and in other occupations, skill level 1, bachelor level as well. Adelaide, South Australia, before they sponsor you, they require you to go and live in Adelaide and either study something related to your occupation or work in that occupation at least 20 hours a week for the last 12 months before they give you the 5 points. And Tasmania requires to you either go and study there for 24 months for a 190, or you work for 6 months full time, 12 months part-time in the occupation. Now, in terms of the 489, which I'll discuss in a minute, Tasmania has similar requirements but at a lower level. And in Canberra, the Canberra matrix, you usually would need to have studied or have a job in Canberra and be living there for the last sort of 3 to 12 months. So state sponsorship is one of the other ways you can get PR. If you're willing to accept a regional, a provisional visa, 489, which is shortly done, which will be called the 491 after the 16th of November, then you may find yourself on a pathway to PR. If your points are not enough, if you're lacking, say on the IELTS, on the PTE, or if you can't do NAATI because your language, let's say it's Telugu, it's Gujarati, it's not on the NAATI list, then you're short of points, but you're willing to accept a regional offer. Then one of the ways you can get PR quicker is actually to accept a 489 from a place like Orana, Southern Inland, Murray, some of the different regional areas in New South Wales that open from time to time that give you 10 points, that invite you to live there for the next 3 years. And then afterwards you can go for a PR visa, either the 887, in which you would have to live there for 2 years, or after the 16th of November 2019, on the 491, if you stay for 3 years in a regional area, then you can go for the 191. Now, the 191, 189, 190, they're all visas that start with a 1, so that means they're full PR. PR is just another visa. It's a 5-year visa. And after some time, you can go for citizenship. If you're from Pakistan, if you're from Colombia, in the United States and other countries that allow dual citizenship, you can acquire Australian citizenship without losing your citizenship. I believe currently in India, though, you would need to renounce Indian citizenship before you acquired Australian citizenship. And same places like Iran and in other countries like China. So regional sponsorship is one of the ways you can get PR, which is accept a 489, accept a lower visa, but at some point jump onto PR. Now that's easier said than done, of course. You need to comply with some requirements. You need to have got your skills assessment already. So it means you need to qualify. So if you're currently in school, currently studying, this is maybe more of a medium to long-term project for you. If you already have your skills assessment and you're prepared to move to a regional area, then you can get in contact with us. And once these regional areas open, because they open from time to time, they open and close. Orana opened on the 1st of July, and within days they closed. Orana opened again on the 1st of August, and within hours they closed. And they'll be open again in the coming months. So if you want to get PR, then this is a strategy to go there. Now, with our clients, when we have clients registered in our system, whenever we see a regional sponsorship option on the table, we ring them up before letting everybody else know. So our clients will be the first ones to know when a regional pathway opens. So that's one of the benefits of coming in, having a discussion with us, sitting down, letting us assess your case so that we can assist you to move to PR if you're lacking on points. Now, the point system has changed a little bit since last year. In the years 2017-18, we had a cap of 190,000 places for PR. But in those 190,000 places, you had the refugee intake, the partners, the parents, the children, the employee sponsored, and then you had points. Now, a couple of things have made the point system more competitive. One is that New Zealanders can now get PR on the 189 through the New Zealand stream. And they're not required to do skills assessment. They're not required to have points. They're only required to have lived in Australia for 4 years and to have made over $53,000 a year for the last 4 years in taxable income. And then they can go for PR, which means that, say you're someone from India and you've come to Australia and you've invested $50,000 in a Masters of IT, right? And then you did your professional year and then you got your 75 points. You're competing with someone who never had to study in Australia, never had to get skills assessment, and never have to go to points. So you're facing now a group that has a bit of an unfair advantage towards you. So you really need to go up that level and do everything you can to maximize your English, your NAATI. If you can do professional year, our recommended options, you go for it. That you maximize your points for experience by getting some related experience through your occupation. And it cannot be just any experience. It has to be experience within the same unit group of that occupation. For example, for computer networks and systems engineer, the unit group is the same as the network analysts, network consultants, systems administrators, LAN administrators, and at least 65 to 70% of your duties should be shared with what the UNSCO classification says. So that's one thing also you got to be aware that even if you get a job that is, let's say, related in a way, in IT, let's say as an IT help desk officer, you can't really claim points for that as a software engineer, because then you'll be claiming something that is not in the same unit group, which would, could get you refused. So one of the ways to insure yourself against it is to come and see us, and we can assess your experience, we can assess your employment contract, we can assess what you're planning to do so that at some point in the future, you can claim the right points and you can actually get PR. Now, the system is changing a little bit as well, because nowadays, more than ever, there are students in Australia. We've got over 1 million students in Australia. But as I said before, the cap for permanent residents is stuck at 160,000. It's actually cut from 190,000 to 160,000. So we have 30,000 less spots than we had last year for PR. So, 9 out of those 10 students in Australia won't get PR. If you're a student and you look at your classroom, not many of them will get PR. You need to insure yourself against it. Get some advice, study the right things. Don't study anything like, leadership and management unless you're just wanting to buy time. Things like marketing and that those things don't lead to PR on a 189, and they're quite difficult to get even on state sponsorship, because you got to remember, even though state sponsorship is an option, last year the state of South Australia invited 3,000 people on the 190 and 489 combined, but there's not 3,000 students in South Australia. There are a lot more than that. There's 30,000. Tasmania invited 2,000 people on the 190 and the 489 combined, but there's not 2,000 students in Tasmania. There are, around 20,000. So not everybody who goes for state sponsorship, not everybody who moves to Adelaide is guaranteed a spot. However, the government is trying to promote regional areas. They're trying to make Darwin the new Brisbane, Adelaide the new Sydney, Hobart the new Melbourne in terms of education. They're trying to push people away from the big 5 centres like Perth, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Gold Coast. If you go and study 2 years and you live and study in a regional area like Geelong, like Ballarat, like Bendigo, like Adelaide, then you're maximizing your chances of getting PR, because then you're getting 5 points for regional. And if you study in South Australia or Tasmania, then you're getting also the possibility that South Australia or Tasmania can give you those 5 points that you need, and then you'll be up. Now, there's also some discussion as to whether the single points will apply to the 189. Right now, we're basing everything on explanatory statements from the government. The law has not been written yet. So we will see closer to November how the single points will play out. But if you ask my personal opinion, I believe this is going to affect everybody, because the aim of the single points is not to reward those in regional areas. It's to punish people who have a spouse and that spouse does not speak English well, or does not have skills in an occupation that is in demand. That's the purpose. So this is why I believe everybody will get either single points or spouse points, or will get deducted because of your spouse. If you're single, you get 10 points. If you are in a de facto relationship or you're married, then if your spouse has PTE 50 on every single band, which is IELTS 6, then you get 5 points back. And if your spouse has a skills assessment in an occupation on the same list as yours, then you get those 5 points back again, so that way you'll be level with the single people. So look, if you want to chat about PR with any of our agents, feel free to approach our consulate office, our Elizabeth office. We have offices all around Melbourne, Perth, Adelaide, Sydney, Brisbane, you name it, even in India and in Dubai and New Zealand. So there's no shortage of people willing to help you and discuss your case. The other thing I wanted to discuss today was that a lot of our clients who have come through us on student visas and then on 45s, their 45s are ending shortly. What do you do if your 45 is ending? So if you don't have at least 2 years experience, then you cannot get a sponsorship on a 42 work visa, which means that probably your last option is to lodge a student visa. And it may be to buy some time, but what do you do? What course do you choose? If you already studied masters, what if you go down a level? You could get refused. Now, from a personal experience, most people would get a student visa. Nowadays, the government is a bit relaxed on the student visas because they've delegated the task of assessing the student back to the colleges, because the colleges have a ranking 1, 2, 3. If the college is good and the students go to class and the college is a good level, then it stays at level 1, then 2 and 3 for high risk colleges. And so do countries. Countries have different risk profiles. 1, 2, 3, India, Colombia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, level 2. Other countries will have be either level 1 in mostly European countries, and then level 3 in other countries from other parts of the world. So it doesn't mean that because the government is being more favorable, is letting more students into Australia to study, that your student visa will get approved. It can get refused. Okay, so that way you really need to have a good GT, a good explanation. Why are you studying what you're intending to study after your TR? the case officer is going to look at your application and decide whether you're really mean to study this. And one of the things that goes against most people is they leave their applications too late. If you are on a TR and it's 2 years and you're waiting for the very last couple of months to lodge a student visa, then you're probably going to get refused, because the case officer will see that you lodged the student visa right at the last moment because you wanted to cling on to Australia and you wanted to buy some more time, presumably because you have an expression of interest in the system and you're just waiting for the points to come down so you can get PR. Now, if you start studying a little bit closer towards the middle of your last year, with a bit more leeway, a bit more time, then it's more likely your student visa would get granted, because you can show that you've been a genuine student for the last 6 months and you're really interested in the course you're studying. And then, you just need to continue the student visa to extend your course, because you've already started it. It's a logical progression of your career. So therefore, you most likely get a student visa on that basis. If you leave things too late, then it's likely you're going to get caught up and you're going to end up at the tribunal. Now, if you don't get your student visa, it doesn't mean that you should start working full time because you're not on a student visa. I still suggest that you go to school, that you complete your courses, because it'll show that you intended to study, you're a genuine student. And even if you need to extend the second time, then it'll show that you've made good academic progress. And even though you've completed 6-7 years in Australia, that all this time you've been a genuine student. All this time you've been trying to increase your skills and increase your knowledge. So that will play in your favor. But if you leave applications for the last minute, right until the very last offer, you're waiting until that PR is granted and it never comes, then you need to start thinking quickly about what you're going to do so that you don't get refused. Now, you need to look at the college's levels as well, because if the college is level 2 and your country is level 2, you most likely won't need to show funds, but you need to be prepared in case immigration comes back and asks for funds, because they have the discretion to always ask you for funds. It's not likely to happen if you're level 2 and school's level 2, but it could happen, so you got to be prepared as well. Now, what happens if the student visa is refused? Okay, well, it's not such a bad thing. If you're in Australia and you applied from Australia, you can appeal. And you can make an application to the appeals tribunal, and the application can take anything between 6 to 18 months to get to the tribunal level. I was at a hearing on last Friday for a person who had applied for review back in February 2018. His visa had been refused in February 2018, and the hearing was in August 2019. So that effectively, allowed him to stay in this country for a year and a half. In the meantime, he continued working, but he also continued going to school, which is something very important, because when the tribunal looks at your application, they will look at the application from scratch, from new, and they will ask, did you really intend to study this? Why did you study this? How did you find out about the college? Would you earn more money in your country if you didn't, if you did this course? And by completing the course, it spoke favorably of his profile as a student, and the tribunal was, in agreeing with him. Now we're waiting for the result. I'll publish the result of that appeal over the next few weeks. And if anyone that you know, or you yourself, need any help with any GTEs or visa refusals, more than happy to help. We have agents who have gone to the tribunal many times over and have won many cases. Now, what happens if the tribunal, let's say in this case, they said no? They said, what if they said, we don't believe you're a genuine student? Then your next recourse, your next legal recourse, is to apply to the Federal Circuit Court. Now, a Federal Circuit Court application can be a little bit expensive. The fee itself is only $650, but an agent, a lawyer, someone can charge you $3,000 up for an application. So you better be prepared that if you need to apply there, that you have the funds for that. Now, when you lodge a federal court application for a review, for judicial review that is, it's not guaranteed that they will give you a hearing. that's something that I need to make very clear. The Federal Circuit Court, the registrar, will look at the affidavit and will decide whether there is enough meat in the application for it to go to a hearing. It may be rejected right away, which will leave you stranded and maybe on a bridging visa E if you don't have enough time for to apply for a BBA, to get your affairs in order before you need to depart the country. Lodging a Federal Circuit Court application does not necessarily mean that you'll get a hearing. But in some cases, we've seen clients that have lodged federal court appeals, and the hearing is 2 to 3 years away. And in the meantime, they're in Australia. And, obviously they'll still try for PR. And if you've been refused once and you're on a bridging visa, then you know that you cannot accept that invitation from Australia. If you get invited for PR and you've already been refused once, then you need to go offshore, go to Bali for a day, apply from there, and come back. Now, and when that visa is granted, then you can withdraw whatever appeal you have going on. If it's a federal, if it's in tribunal, if it's even a ministerial intervention, because what happens after federal court is you may be able to apply for ministerial intervention if your case has enough grounds for it. Obviously, would not advise anyone to lodge an application that has no merit, but there are many legal avenues that allow you to stay in Australia even after you've been refused once. Now, those are all very unsavory. You want to get the visa right the first time, because many of you make enormous investments to come to Australia, to pay 50 to 60,000 on a master's degree, on a bachelor's, or 20 to 30 to 40K in a diploma, plus the time it takes you to gain the experience, so you can get your skills assessment, moving from place to place, going to college, paying your taxes. You've made enormous investments to stay in Australia, but sometimes the system may go against you. There are many, many legal avenues that you can appeal to so that you can stay here a little bit longer while you build up the points. So that's it for me today. If you want to get your PR quicker, the number one tip I can give you is come to see Aussizz, because whenever anyone has gone to many agents, and they'll always end up here. The second thing is, if your visa is expiring soon, if let's say a 45 is expiring soon, then come and see us with some time before that visa expires. Don't leave for the last minute, because then it can go against you. It can really go against you, and then you could get refused and you can end up in the appeal circuit. And let me tell you, it's not a pleasant place to be. Where you want to be is with a substantive visa, so that when you apply for PR, you can accept it from here. Otherwise, you need to go offshore. But lastly, even if you start on the appeals circuit, the tribunal, to federal, ministerial intervention, high court, you name it, although it's unpleasant, it can allow you to stay here a little bit longer so that you can get your PR. Or let's say you meet someone in the meantime, and you enter into a relationship with an Australian, you find the love of your life, and you're in the appeals court, then you can still apply for partner visa. It will be challenging, but that's something that we can help you with as well. So I hope you found this information useful. If you have any queries, just jot them down below, type them in. I'm going to go back to my office. I'll answer as many as I can. I'll leave my phone number down below. You can contact me. You can visit me at level 1, 290 Collins Street. We have many agents here ready to help you. And if you've got any queries, just let me know. And I look forward to chatting to you next time. Thanks very much.